Okay.
There you are.
Okay. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So let me know if everyone has trouble hearing me or has any issues with that. But basically, I'm going to talk about a new method for creating the Sil Bonnet panels on our homes. This came about on a new project, the Lytica Wright project. I can show you. Is the first balance to have, for my understanding at least, to have Sil Bonnet on it. Sil Bonnet on it. And it's this whole wall, right? So basically the back side of Mod A, I believe, is all Sil Bonnet along that face. And then the rest is all just hardy plank, or hardy siding. And so instead of, well, actually, Luke, I didn't even know there was a method yet. I just saw the Mooney wall type Sil Bonnet. So I started doing this, and then I heard later that there was essentially placing individual panels. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, that is correct. And we had only had situations where we had a handful of panels that needed to go in, and so it wasn't too bad placing them individually. It was still a little bit of a pain.
Yeah.
And so even for small areas where the old system would sort of be okay, I still want to encourage people to use this new system just because it's so much easier to modify, and you don't have to do it one panel at a time. You sort of define the overall system, and it takes care of all of the individual panel dimensions. So yes, we did have an old method, but it was really primitive and somewhat cumbersome, and this is far better, and everybody should use it for all panels, not only for large areas like this.
Sure. So I'll show you. I'm going to basically walk through how I create, or essentially how you create the, and I may put together some kind of document that kind of is like a little walkthrough as to how you create the curtain wall type. But so essentially, what you're going to do is create a curtain wall type, which technically maybe you don't have to do that. We'll just put it on the blue standard file for you to transfer that wall type in. And it'll be in, then you can drag it around. So I'll kind of show you more how to manipulate once we've gotten to that point. But there's a couple steps you have to do leading up to that. So if you see, this is just the in-process file that I've been working in a little bit. One thing you do have to do is first create or place the Mooney wall type, but you have to do it without siding. Right, so all of our Mooney walls typically have either hardy or Sil Bonnet or cedar as one of the layers. So that should also be something we just put in the blue standard file for you to transfer in. But essentially, all you're going to do is just edit the type, go in, remove the finished layer, and you're good. So then after that, you will go to wall. So you're going to, curtain walls are kind of, the perception is that you're actually building a curtain wall, which is typically glass, a big glass wall with mullions, and you place it that way. But nowadays in Revit, you can manipulate the curtain wall type to be really anything. You could make precast, you could make Sil Bonnet in our case, or you can make pretty high-level, complex glass curtain wall with mullion systems. Today, we'll just talk about how to make a panel. So I'll show you what I actually created. So in the type properties, just go through this. If you wanted to create a new one yourself, just if you wanted to kind of mess around, you would just duplicate this and change some of the panel types and so on. Luke, I believe, you created this curtain panel type after I had created one, correct? So it does have BOM information and stuff in it, right?
Yes, I did. And I believe the BOM information is all still coming out of, I can't remember whether we embedded that panel with the BOM object lookup or if both of those are being pulled from the material.
Gotcha.
I'd have to look at that again to remember. But yes, that type
Okay.
with the material applied has all of the BOM information that you need.
Gotcha. Okay. So there are multiple types. So just to maybe back up a little, within the curtain wall system family, per type, you can place kind of predefined, presets essentially. So what panel type you want in it, what mullion types you want, the grid layout if you wanted a regulated grid, every 8 feet or in both vertical, horizontal directions, which I think I've explained a little bit before, but just to rehash that, and then all some of the other kind of information that's more day to day. But really, if you look in here, you could place any wall type. So essentially, you have the ability to, if you wanted to make this, a Blue Mooney wall panel, it has the thickness of and the layering of the Blue Mooney wall. But again, for our instance, I think it's probably more simple just to focus on this and do the Blue Mooney walls the same way we have been. So, but again, this is for more customizations, right? If you wanted to create something that was more highly custom and that did have mullions or whatever that may be. So again, this is the panel that we've created. I can show you how we did that. Basically, you have to take, you go to the basic curtain panel in your family's browser and go to any of these and duplicate it, right? And go into the properties there, change its material, which we did, and change that to the Sil Bonit type. Its thickness, so ours is 5/16, I believe, and then offset. Offset is basically, you have to fidget with that a little bit, but it's basically how far from the center of the curtain wall do you want that panel to offset, the face of the panel. So ours, again, would be 5/16, so it's offset from the center that way. And I'll show you what that means here in a second. But so that's how you create a panel type. And then, again, when you create your curtain wall type, you just assign panels to that.
Could you go into the type properties for the actual Sil Bonit panel for a second?
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Okay, yeah, so it looks like the BOM, see right at the very bottom, the blue
Yep.
BOM object lookup, that's the 10-digit
Yep.
lookup that needs to be in there, and then the blue material is set to that Sil Bonit material, and that has the material lookup inside of it.
Great.
So those need to be set, and because the material is set per type rather than as an instance property like it is for Windows, if you have two different types of Sil Bonit in the same project, you'll have to make a duplicate of that Sil Bonit panel type and change the material in that blue material to the new one.
Great. Yeah, great. Okay, perfect. The other thing, too, is these can be tagged just the way all the other materials can be, right? So I know we're doing exterior material tags kind of thing now. It's just as easy to do that. So that's the other advantage to that. But that'll typically be done per project. I don't think it'll have a common tag throughout every project. So, okay, so now to actually modeling it, right? So you've got your Mooney wall with no siding. You create a wall, and there's options, but you're just going to do the regular architectural wall. Curtain wall, Sil Bonit. Pick whatever height you want, and as you drag, you see it's kind of like just the typical how you would pull a wall. And in our case, the panel is at the back of the panel is at the line of the curtain wall. Again, that's based on that offset we talked about a minute ago in terms of how far you want that to offset. In typical curtain walls, you'd want the glass to offset, whatever distance from the center of the curtain wall, so you have your mullion spacing is correct and all that. But in this case, I'll show you. So essentially, what we're doing is just facing the, applying the panels to the face of that, to that Mooney wall. So if I show you the elevation, it's not going to look too pretty. It's pretty boring. You see I have really awesome double hung windows in there just for the sake of this. But that brings up the point that when you pull the first curtain wall, it blocks everything, right? And unfortunately, you can't, like in other instances, you can't join the curtain wall to the wall behind it. and thus taking on the properties of it and the openings, right? So in typical, if you had a regular wall, you could join the two, and it would cut an opening in that wall as well and show the windows. But in our case, it's not quite that simple, but it is pretty simple. So what we're going to do is within the curtain wall family, the way you start to break it up is by adding these curtain grids. So you can either do that in plan or in elevation. And you can start to see just in that little preview how it places grids there. But again, so you can do that in plan or elevation. So I can start to just place grids where I'm going to be essentially not hiding, but replacing the panels that are in front of the windows with a different, essentially an empty panel. Then it will, really just allow the window to show through. So let me go back to here. Now you see I've got grids where I've placed those, and there's panels in between. So that previously, to me placing the grids, there was just it was one big panel, right? And now it's broken up by how I wanted that to be. And so, real quick. So again, now I've only gotten on the sides of my window. If I want to block out that whole window and make it show through, there's another option with these curtain grids when you're in elevation to place one segment, or you can, do some different options there. But so if I wanted only to, go above that window, I'm going to place a grid there. And that warning that's coming up is just based on some default stuff that we don't need to worry about. Okay, so now still you're seeing it's not coming through. That window's not coming through. But what you have to do is select the panel that's in front of it. And you see it's pinned right now. And it's pinned because within our curtain wall system, we predefined that we wanted a certain panel type. So every panel type, even if you put grids on it, is going to be that Sil Bonit panel. Now you could tell the curtain wall system to be none and then place all your panel types after that, but I think it's easier to just have it all be the same panel type and then replace with separate ones as you wish. So you just have to unpin it, and then you're going to change the type of panel that it is. And there's a default in Revit that comes. You don't have to make this. It just comes with it. That's an empty system panel. And I'm pretty sure this is the only reason for it, is to have the ability to do this. So now that I've made that an empty panel, there's no panel there. All these others stay the same, and you have, your window opening. And you can align these pretty easily too. As you saw, I hadn't placed my bottom grid yet. So this whole panel is that height. Again, just going to go back here, curtain grid, one segment, place it under there. Yeah. And you do have to fuss with it sometimes, and there you go. So that's that in terms of how you're going to start to kind of place grids. Again, you could, if you had some sort of regulated, system, you could plug that into the curtain wall type itself. But trying to think what else, what other details go into this.
Is there a maximum Sil Bonit panel size?
Good question.
I think they come in
I
think they come in 4x8s, so we shouldn't have any panels which can be accommodated by that. And I think Jeremy is working out a system for trying to programmatically set up warnings where if you have an incorrect panel dimension, it'll pop up a warning when you try to run bomb gen or bomb check. But right now, you just have to do it visually and just make sure when you're designing you don't have a 10-foot wide panel.
Yeah, and so that's one of the other good things too here is you can create schedules pretty easily. So now I'm back to the Whitaker project, curtain panels. So now it's essentially telling us you can schedule each panel within the curtain wall system, and it tells you area, count. Obviously, you don't really need that, but and then width and height. right? So if it was a possibility of creating shop drawings more easily, or however they want to work that in the factory, we've got everything in terms of information here that's a little more cut and dry.
So it looks like, if you go back to that panel schedule real quick, it looks like you
Yep.
do have 2 panels at the very bottom, which are 9 foot 10.
Yeah.
You could create a sort of a check schedule for yourself and not have to rely on Jeremy doing it programmatically. You could set up a filter inside of a schedule that says only show panels which have either width or height greater than 8 feet, and that way you could always go to that schedule and see if you have any panels that need to be modified or split into or whatever.
Sure.
It wouldn't give you an
Or you
error
could
if you
create
did a 5x5 panel, which is technically not, you can't make one of those because you have a 4-foot
Right.
width.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could
Yeah,
set up
that's
a schedule to do a little self check.
Sure. I was even going to say putting a conditional statement in there or something, but then you're right, that wouldn't account for the 5x5 issue. But
Well, you might be able to write if width is greater than 4. Yeah, I mean, you could figure out the logic to
exactly.
make it, to check for 4x8 in both dimensions, or both directions.
Yeah. So, that's another added benefit. And so one thing I'll go back to also, and this is kind of important, as I talked about with typical curtain walls, obviously have glass with a mullion, right? So you have the ability to place mullions pretty automatically, and in our case, for Sil Bonnets, we don't have mullions. We just have reveals, actually. And so what Luke actually kind of came up with this idea that we create a mullion that acts as a reveal. So essentially, we created a 1/2-inch mullion type. Again, if we wanted a different gap between each panel, you could vary that. But again, it's materialless. There's no material to this. Has the thickness of the depth of the panel, or the thickness of the panel, and then the width on each side of the grid. So again, mullions typically are placed on the center line of a grid. The width on each side of the grid is a 1/4 inch, thus giving us a 1/2-inch gap, right? So again, and you can edit this, duplicate it, and have different stuff. But again, in our case, I don't think we need that. And so let me see. Unfortunately, in that in-process model, I didn't have mullions created yet. But
Andrew?
Yes.
So if you go back to that schedule, there was an issue with the material square footage and the actual width and height in the first 2. Like material area is 4 square feet, but the width and height don't have anything. And then one below it is 0 square feet, but obviously like 1 foot by.
True.
So I don't know.
For the one that says it's 0 square feet, it's just, I think Revit rounds the square footage value. So that one looks like it's 2 inches high by 1 foot, so it's like, 0.2 square feet, so it rounded down to 0.
Yeah, I think you can set your rounding decimals to get it more accurate than the square foot. You could get, I think, square feet in inches. I'm not sure exactly where to change that parameter. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with the one in the first line, why the width and height isn't coming through.
Yeah, me either. And I haven't had too much of a chance to look through the panel. This is just kind of like automatically thrown in there. I don't know what this one is, though. Never mind. So obviously, we can work on this, but in terms of making sure this works correctly.
Oh yeah, definitely. I just saw that little.
Yeah, thank you.
At the top.
It all looks like a blur to me. So, okay. And obviously, we don't. Well, maybe we do. We probably don't want a panel that's 2 inches wide by 1 foot tall.
We should probably try to stay away from that if we can. I mean, you've got a lot of clear story windows in a really thin space.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think just being conscious about what type of panel layout you're doing is probably the way to avoid that sort of thing.
Right.
But we may not be able to. Like in this case, because you have those windows in that really thin area, you might just need a little strip of something. Whether they actually build it like that or not is another is
Yeah.
another question, but
Right.
yeah, just try to
Right.
do pretty layout.
Yeah, like this should probably just be a mold window, but that's besides the point. So anyway, again, the mullion idea is that you're placing a half-inch gap. Let me see if I can just do this really quick. Sorry if I'm taking too long here, but because it's pretty easy to just place all the mullions, all those half-inch gaps on there. So curtain wall mullions. Thankfully, we have one created here. Okay, good. So that's the other thing, actually. Within your curtain wall system, you can assign it the mullion type automatically. So every grid you place, it's just going to be automatically put on there. So in our case, you don't really have to worry about, because this should just be built into the family. If you want to import it from the standards file, it'll automatically be there. Now, what's not going to be there is the fact that you should probably, you don't necessarily have to, but you should probably hide all the mullions because we want it to show up as a gap. And there's probably a way that we could manipulate the family itself to be a void. Obviously there is, but for the sake of doing it fast, I had just created a new, not extrusion, but mullion type that worked this way. So a quick and easy way to do this, right? So you've got, once you populate your whole curtain wall with all these mullions and grid lines and everything, it works pretty simply that once you've got that system done, there's options in terms of selection on it, right? So if I wanted to select all the mullions on that grid line, you can do it that way. But in my case, I don't want any of them to show up, so I'm going to select on the host until all of them are selected, and then I'm just going to hide them. And so then, then it is visually, at least, truly a gap, right?
Andrew, did you figure out whether you could set that in a view template to hide all of your mullions? Like, is that in your view properties, or do you have to do it by element?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so that would work just the same. Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Any higher level questions or any other questions at all, let me know. Does anybody have any questions right now?
I have a couple of comments.
Yep.
One, so you have to go through a little bit of a different process if you're doing these panels on a wall, but only on a portion of the wall instead of doing it on the whole wall. Mm-hmm. The way that we have been defining, like if you have a cedar wall and you need to put panels on it, we were doing a split face and paint, and I think we'll still have to do that. Otherwise, it will overcount the amount of the linear siding which is on there. So rather than sort of removing the material from the wall definition like you did in this instance, we'll still have to do the split face and paint the underlying wall with either no material or a blank material or something like that, just to get the count of the linear siding correct before you do this curtain panel system. The other thing, what's that?
Well, couldn't you just make a curtain panel type that was the siding? So if you have your base wall that doesn't have siding on it, and then when you put your curtain wall, some of them will be, like, for example, Sil Bonit, and some will be hardy.
Actually, that's a really good point.
Yeah, it is. Right.
You want to give that a shot?
Okay. Hardy. Let's hope I have that loaded in here.
On that, I wonder if we could do our trim as mullions on that system. So you know how we're placing our trim elements? right now sort of
Yes.
tracing it. Maybe we could set up a mullion to do that rather than using a trim family.
Yes, you can. Although then trim and your panels would be short by the width of whatever trim it is, because it doesn't allow the panel to kind of like slide behind the trim.
Right. Okay. Darn it.
So I guess here, let me see. These aren't up to date, of course, but we can just show it for the sake of doing it. We're gonna say that that's the thickness. So sorry. Of course, switch that. Bingo. So, yeah, you could have like, crazy walls all over the place. That'll be a new design feature. Is mosaic walls.
Yeah. Could you go into the plan view? I just want to see how that aligns interior exterior. Where is that?
What do you mean?
Like, it looks like we're not seeing the Hardy panel.
Yeah, because it's above, of course.
Yeah.
No, I'll just go right back to this. And you can change everything in plan, too.
Yeah, just change that one.
Yeah, same way. Now, if we, I guess Hardy's probably thicker than let's just say that's 1/2 inch. And then we would have to fix the offset. Right. So it would look like that. So yeah, to answer your trim question, right? Like if that were a 2-inch wide piece of trim, it would pull this that way and that way, so your actual board count would be off.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, so yeah, go back into your elevation view. I want to see just want to see what that looks like now.
And you can align these.
And then, yeah, could you remove that mullion between the two so that it looks like it's one continuous panel? I assume you can.
Yep. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I forgot to mention this. After you've placed mullions, like let's say you place one just like I did, and you don't want this guy showing up, you can so you select the grid and add remove segments, and you can remove just a piece of that, and it shows up like that. Right?
Yep, looks good.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, maybe we'll try doing that. We may be doing all of our exterior walls as curtain walls from now on.
Maybe.
Maybe we will.
No, I think it's maybe let everyone try it and see how much of if it is a pain to kind of like do all the grid line work and make sure all this stuff's empty panels and all that stuff as compared to the method we've been doing before. And, we'll see where it goes, I guess. But
yeah.
I think it works pretty well,
Yeah, I think so too. All right.
So one
Go
quick
ahead.
other thing. So if a window moves, you have to move the panel with it, or if you change out a window, you have to change the panel with it. I mean, not that that's like a huge deal. I just want to make sure that that's the case.
Yes.
Since the walls aren't connected.
Can you lock the grid line to the reference plane inside the window? Because I
believe you can.
If you do that, it might automatically update the grid line when you switch out the window.
Yes, I think you can. I don't know how to do that, though.
Just use a line.
Yeah, use the align tool and select.
Oh, just the line. Okay.
Yes, select the line inside the window family.
Yeah.
And then select the grid line. Whoa.
I don't know if that did it or not.
Do you have another window loaded? Try switching out that window.
Oh, yeah, good point. I don't think I have another. Well, I have another size.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, no, it didn't do it.
All right.
I don't think we locked it though, unless.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's your rough opening. There you go.
Okay, there we go.
And now
Okay,
switch
that'll-
out your window.
Boom.
Bam! Right like that. Love it.
Making moves here on Tuesday. Okay, sweet. Yeah, that looks even better than I imagined. Okay. Any other sweet ideas? Okay.
I don't know.
Cool.
Looks pretty good. Go ahead.
I guess one question I'd have is, Steve, if you had, now, I haven't worked on a project that's had the Sil Bonit yet, but it seems like usually it's a pretty big wall that you're using that on, but I'm just wondering if you had an area where you had like just a single area of maybe only like 2 panels worth of accent siding, is there much advantage to doing it this way versus just doing like a split face and applying the material to it? Like, I know you get a little more accurate geometric information. I guess you show the reveal on it too, but I'm just thinking like, you know.
Yes, I think I've come across that issue, and if you see the elevation on my screen right now, I haven't filled these in yet because I'm still trying to figure it out. But there's supposed to be Sil Bonit here and above the door, basically, and I'm trying to figure out how we can do that. Whether it's I need to do the split face thing, or if there's a way that I can just do the exterior panels, maybe just how we actually figured out, like maybe by just doing siding plus Sil Bonit within the curtain wall family. But again, I don't know if we're ready to adopt that fully yet. So
yeah, let me take a look at that before we fully roll that out for everybody to make sure that it works. And just to be clear, the split face paint, that was sort of 2 standards ago. The way that we're doing it currently, because we need to have a panel count, is that there is a panel siding family which you can place on an exterior wall, and it has a void inside of it which cuts out the existing siding, so it would cut out the cedar. So if you wanted to do it the previous way, you would have to use those panel component items rather than doing the split face and paint in order to get the panel count right. We were using the split face and paint when we didn't need to include the number of panels on the BOM, but now that we do need to include it, you either need to place individual components, which are panels, which have sort of a height and width parameter inside of them, which controls their size, or use the curtain panel system.
Gotcha.
Cool. Okay.
All right. Yeah, that looks really great.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you could pass control back over to me. And we're recording this, and I will post it to the YouTube channel so that if you guys don't remember exactly every step of how to do all of this, you can go back there for reference.
Okay. I think I sent it back to you.
I did not get a...
Oh, I think I need to stop showing my screen, maybe. Did that work?
Oh, yes. Here I go. I just took it back.
Okay. Cool.
All right. All right, so we've got 20 minutes before we are having our design call. As usual, I'm not going to be able to get through everything that I have on my list, but through that, maybe I'll switch over to the schedules. I feel like that's more important for you guys. So inside the blue library file, they're actually inside this blue library standard 2 file, just because I think 2 people were working in this blue library file at the same time, but these schedules, which is what we're looking at, are going to be moved back to the blue library standard file probably at the end of today. So definitely that's where you should be getting them from. And I'm sort of checking them over right now to make sure that they're working how they should be. But I think most everything which is in there has been cleaned up and should be at least 90% ready for everybody to use if you bring it into your projects. And let me just show you what those look like. So I have a test project that I work in to sort of vet all of the families and do modifications to them, and I brought those schedules into that project. You can sort of see what it looks like. So yeah, it's basically just a big long array of all of the components of different families that Jeremy wrote me this nice little program where I don't have to place them individually. I just hit a button and it places everything that I have in my library into my project so that I can schedule it. So I basically did that. Yeah, it's pretty fun, right? I still have to load them all at once, but once they're all loaded, like you can see, here's all of our different casework families. It's under here. You guys don't have this one. I had to make it specially for me, but it's this Create Family Schedule. And basically what it does is just arrays it all out so that I can take a look at it. But these are the schedules that I brought in from that standard project, and I'm going through them all right now just to make sure that A, the schedules look right and they have the right parameters inside of them, and all of the families are correct and their parameters are filled out. So here's a door schedule for the exterior. These are all of the fields that are inside of the door families. And then once you get this in, I think right now, because it's an exterior one, I think it's filtering by function equals exterior. If your families don't have these parameters set according to the filters, you may bring this schedule into your project and you won't be able to see anything if you don't have that parameter set. So in order to set it, you can turn it off, change whatever you need to, and then you have to set it again, turn it back on. Or really what you should be doing is reloading the families that already have that function parameter set inside of them. Interior schedule. Fixture and accessory schedule is a little bit more complicated because it doesn't have a family category to read from, whereas a door schedule, it knows to only use doors, whereas a fixture and accessory schedule, those are usually generic models, and this is sort of bathroom fixtures. This doesn't mean light fixtures. Lighting fixtures is a different schedule. But so you can see in this schedule, I have the category, so it has all of the casework inside of it as well. Casework, doors, electrical fixtures. So we'll need to set up some filters to filter by family category, and then you can always use, like we were before, use this instance ID property to hide things. And then right now, as you can see in my project, I don't have anything in any rooms, but if you did in your project have them by room, you could filter by room. So if you only wanted to show the bath 1 schedule, you just say, filter, room name equals, and then select whatever room you want. So there is going to be a little bit of project-specific settings that you'll have to set after you bring them in order to use them how you want, but these are really good base templates to work from. Lighting fixture schedule. Material schedule, interior and exterior. So these are going to require some manipulation of the materials themselves in order for them to show up properly in these schedules. And the way that we've been doing that is by using the keynote field inside of the materials. And I think what would be good is if we came up with sort of a list of standard nomenclature that we're going to be filtering by in the materials and add those to materials in the library, and that way you won't have to do this on a project by project basis, but you could also use this material keynote feature for now until we do get it in the standard material library as a way to filter things, or if you have your own way that you need to filter these things by, you can just add that to the specific materials and use that as a filter. But let's just turn this off for now. And how do I have this grouped? So material mark. We'll do it by material name. So here's a list of all your materials, and again, you can take it and filter it down however you need to, and normally this material keynote is how we want to do the filtering. So this is still sort of a developing standard, but that's the way that it's going to be working, and we should get our material library to match. And so the idea is for exterior materials, you just add exterior in the keynote. For interior, you add interior. You can also add things like if it's a siding material, you could add siding in there. So for clear cedar, we could make this exterior and siding, and then you could have an exterior finish schedule that has all of your exterior materials, and it would show up on there. Or if you only wanted to see your siding materials, make a siding schedule, you could filter and say, keynote includes siding. So yeah, that's how these things are being filtered. Use that keynote as much as you can. Same thing with the interior materials, and then the sheet lists are schedules as well, and those are just doing the filtering by sheet set contains whatever that word is. So you can see sheet
Luke,
set
real
equals
quick
local. Yep.
So in the material schedule for the exterior per se, is that going to be relating to, like on our elevations, you're going to place a exterior material schedule there, then you're going to be tagging based on that? That's how I would have understood it.
Yes, that is correct. So yeah, you'll place it. Oops, I just got lost. Yeah, so you'll place a schedule, and you'll have to duplicate these for each of the different material schedules that you want to filter by. Like I was saying, exterior, interior, these are sort of a duplicate of each other with that filter set differently. And then for tagging, you can see some of these, I think, are older materials. This 10-digit lookup inside the numbers, this used to be inside the material mark parameter, and we are now we're now keeping that 10-digit number in the material model parameter. So let me take a look at this real quick. So yeah, so this is how it's supposed to be set up. So this 10-digit number should be in material model. Some materials which are used inside of system families, such as walls, they also have a 10-digit lookup in the manufacturer category. But Keynote, this is what we're going to be using for filtering interior, exterior, tile, flooring, all of those types of things. And that's just a bunch of strings of text separated by spaces. And then Mark is what we should be using to tag materials with. So in the, I have it on my other screen, let me pull it up. Inside our library, we have a tag, standard annotations. So tag material mark. If you use this tag as your material tag, that will read this parameter from the material as a call out on your elevation. And this, I don't think we're going to be setting as a standard inside of the material library. You're going to have to define this for your materials on a project by project basis. So for your exterior materials, you have EX-1 will be your number one exterior material. EX-2 will be your second one. So that will still have to be set on a project by project basis. And the reason for that is if we put this as a sort of standard between projects, all of your callouts are going to say like EX-124 and EX-320 or whatever. So I think numbering them in the project, because you're only using a handful of them, you do 1, 2, 3, 4 rather than having just these sort of weird numbers inside of them. So that will still have to be set on a project level, but that's the material that you use for this. And then Kevin and I were talking a little earlier. He was saying that sometimes he would want to have tagged on an elevation not only the mark, which will call out the material and reference your material schedule, but he also wanted to have a comment to be pulled out with that material if you need a particular comment for it. And the way that you would have that show up is we'll have to make a duplicate of this tag, and we'll call it, mark and comment or something like that. Oops, I think I might have just opened another copy of Revit by doing that.
What would be an example of a comment you might use,
Kevin? I don't know. Kevin, are you still on the call? Do you have an idea?
Yeah. Sometimes we say, like, because the schedule might say a particular dimension of a spec, for example, trim, but for our purposes it needs to be ripped down to size, or if a material is meant to or intended to match another, for example, the downspout of the gutter is matching the roof color or something like that. And it'll be obvious in the schedule, but it's just sometimes nice to call it out as matching or something like that.
Yeah, great. I was trying to figure something like that out earlier today, so that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, the other option is to just type it in as a text somewhere close by, but it would just be nice to have it like within the tag.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so what we can do to use that is you can go into the schedule and you can add this material comments to your schedule, and that way, so that way it'll show up in your material schedule, and you can add, I'll just make this real quick. So we'll do a save as of this family.
While you're in here, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
With the tag itself, some tags you can have multiple leaders on the tag. Do you know how to make this one have an additional leader for, like, if you want to tag the trim of the window but also the trim of the building, which are typically maybe right next to each other, rather than copying the tag and having multiple tags of the same material right next to each other? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I'm not sure if you can do that with material tags, because I know it tries. Well, you can have a free end on some of them. I don't know why that didn't.
But that would be then the free or the second leader would have to point to something that was the same. Otherwise,
the same material,
the tag
right?
would fail, right?
Yeah,
Which gets a little tricky.
Yeah, exactly, right. I don't even know how to add another leader. So
yeah, I think you would need. Yeah, I think it could get confusing if I think it would only read the property of the first leader, and I know some tags let you have a second leader and some of them don't, and my guess is this one doesn't, just so that you can't point the second leader at something that doesn't agree with the first one. Gotcha. So yeah, I don't think you can do it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. It's kind of in the weeds anyway, but okay.
So yeah, I'm in the tag. I'm modifying this label. I'm going to add comments. So now it's reading the mark and the comment, and since this is a material tag, this is the material comments. That's not some other comments. And I'm going to say I want a break between the first one and the second one. So now mark and comments. And it looks like it saved the name. It gave me an error saying it didn't, but let's add that into, maybe I'll go into the other one. And you change which tag you're using for which thing under here. Go into your loaded tags. How do you change your material tag? Oh, I don't have one loaded anyways. Sorry, I loaded that into the wrong one. All right, so now I've got my tag loaded into my project. Material tag. Yeah, so I don't know. material this thing has on it. Oh yeah, right now it doesn't have any material on it. And actually Casework's probably a bad example, but yeah, you can see that there are 2 question marks now instead of 1 question mark. So yeah, it's trying to read the material, or trying to read the mark up top, and trying to read the comments in the bottom. So if I was good and had a good material over here, that would carry through into the tag and into the schedule. And I'm just going to modify this one really quick. So I'll have that say 1, and that say comment, and apply white Yamaha.
Probably not a great idea to do this, but you can edit the actual tag, and it changes all the marks and comments in all the other families that you have placed, right? So if you were to click on those 2 question marks you had just tagged, you could change the mark right there, and it changes it for all of them rather than having to go through all the
I actually didn't know that. So you modify the tag, and it actually modifies your material library.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it doesn't change the actual material. It just changes that mark that's attached to whatever you're talking to. So if, for example, if a material you place doesn't have a mark yet, but you know the material's right, then you could change the mark there rather than going into all your material properties and all that stuff. But just a shortcut that's risky. That's like most shortcuts.
Right. No, that's good though. I mean, if we are setting these at the project level, either setting them inside your material schedule over here and over here rather than going into your material library will be a lot faster. So yeah, either doing it through the tag or doing it through the schedule is an easy way to update all of those things. That's a really good point. So yeah, I guess the short of it is these schedules are, I think, in pretty good shape for you to be able to use and pull them from that blue standard file at the end of the day. I would say I'll try to get them all back in there after I've made the last little bit of modifications. And we are about out of time. So does anybody have any questions about this or about the curtain panels before we all have to jump over to our other meeting?
That was awesome.
All right. I think all the questions are coming from the background noise. So, all right, guys, thanks for showing up. Let me or Andrew know if you have any questions about the curtain panel stuff, and I will do a final check-in about whether we can use a curtain panel for the entire siding of walls that have partial siding and partial linear siding and partial panelized siding. But I think we will be able to. But yeah, I'll give you guys the final word on that. And then last comment before we jump, I got confirmation from the factory about their rough opening dimensions. So I will send out an email this afternoon with what they are using for their rough opening dimensions. And you should be able to switch those for your windows and doors inside of your project. And if you have questions about how to do that, let me know. That was one thing I wanted to cover in this meeting, but we just sort of ran out of time. So, yep, that's it. Thanks, guys. Talk to you in a couple minutes.
Thanks.